Expats in Austin, the podcast where we explore the lives of expatriates living right here in Austin, Texas. I'm your host, Kurt Russell. We'll hear the stories from these unique people who chose to leave their country of birth to make Austin their home. We'll meet the entrepreneurs who navigated the extra obstacles to start their own businesses in this very special city. And we hear from the experts about immigration, relocation, taxes, mortgages, healthcare, family life, balancing cultures, and much, much more. It's time to meet the expats in Austin. We are extremely lucky that our very first guest ticks all the boxes that make up the Expats in Austin podcast. 1, she's an expatriate herself. She comes from Warsaw, Poland. After living in Mexico for 6 years, she moved here and has been living in the Austin area for the past 7 years. 2, she runs her own business right here in Austin. And 3, that business is helping new expatriates with their own journey to Austin. Her name is Anna.zieleniewska, and Anna has been a destination service consultant for the past 15 years. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, just what does a destination service consultant do? And what's the one thing you must do the moment you know you're coming to Austin? And of course, what's the one thing you must do once you get here in Austin? And finally, what's the strangest question she's ever had to answer? Do you have any idea how many expatriates there are in the Austin area?
Very hard to define, who is the expatriates, because it's not only the family that's relocating, Are those children of those expatriates also expatriates? Or are they from Austin? Like, I moved to Austin and my son was 2 when we moved, but most of his life he spent in Austin. So is he from here or is he not? Is he Mexican? Is he Polish? Or is he, from Austin? I always say that he's half Mexican, half Polish, half Austin. And I think this is a very fair statement.
Yeah, I won't go into my story too much, but I will say this, that we do have 4 children. 1 was born in New York. 2 were born in London. 1 was born in Holland.
Right.
My wife is British. I met her in France. They're all American. They all carry American passports. They never lived in America as children, and they never lived in London as children. They lived in Belgium and Holland.
Exactly. So are they expatriates in Austin? I would say they are, because they haven't lived here. So even though they hold the passport and they speak the language, it's all new to them. I just had a client who has Brazilian last name. He was born in Brazil. He speaks Portuguese. He has a Polish passport. He doesn't speak a word of Polish. He has Polish grandparents. Is he Polish?
What are some of the most common questions people ask you when they first meet you and start your services?
Younger people, where's the nightlife and when is the next festival? Families, schools, schools, good schools, diverse schools. It's also very interesting to observe certain nationalities care for the highest academics and the highest scores. Other nationalities, people from other areas care for diversity and social demographic diversity. And you have to accommodate, both of those perspectives.
Mm-hmm. So you offer your personal localized information about these things.
Exactly, correct. So you can learn a lot from internet and from websites, but there's always this personal feedback that is important. And I have it, from my clients, from my friends, from my coworkers. And I think this is, the spice that's very important in this meal of relocation.
When you're doing this, do you meet them face to face?
Yes.
And then are you then required to go sample the festivals and nightlife of Austin to guide them through town and show them where all the good places are?
Yes and no. So I do get a lot of invitations to family dinners, for example, and they cook their meals from home. And I had a fantastic Indian meal, and a British roast for Sunday. And it's a pleasure to know that this family trusts me and wants to show gratitude by inviting me to their home, to their, family dinner. I also, on the other hand, try to keep it professional, and I come from HR, so there's a fine line between, the professional side and the personal side, and we try not to mix it. We HR people try not to mix it too much. So, festivals and drinks and stuff like that, I try to politely decline. But, then we meet in other circumstances. Austin is small, and I meet my clients on birthday parties for kids. And, it's very different then.
What has been the most awkward situation that you experienced in this respect?
I think the most awkward part of this job is because for many families, I am the only person they know in destination. And it's a challenging time for every family, every marriage to relocate. And it doesn't always go so smooth. So I listen. It's part of my job.
So you're a part-time therapist.
At least a listener.
You want to be as helpful and
right.
And as empathetic as possible. But at one point, you're spending time, and you are a consultant. You are self-employed, so probably the most valuable aspect of what you do, apart from your knowledge, is your time. How do you explain that to people?
Right. I think, it's important to manage expectations from the beginning. So we talk about the scope of services. We talk about, what services are assisted, accompanied, what services are online. And I try to, every time there is a difficult situation, explaining, will you go with me by a car? I try to go back and explain this is not part of our service. It's not that I wouldn't do it personally, because personally I love spending time with you and chatting with you, my expatriate, but it's not part of our scope. And because of liabilities, I cannot do that.
So how does somebody come in contact with Anna?
So I work with a couple of relocation companies, destination services companies, and they work through global mobility with multinational companies that relocate their employees. This is the main part of my job. So
right now, you're not coming across individual clients. You're being contacted by a company, and they say, we've got a family, they're coming over here, we're going to hire you to help them.
Right. This is the main part. There are also individuals interested in destination services, and it usually goes through real estate, because the real estate person is the first one they contact. But the real estate person doesn't always help them with, schools and activities for kids and how to get driving license. So this is where they contact me and they say, well, this is what you do, so why don't we share this client? I'm like, sure.
So you get let's say you came in contact with a new client, either through the company that has hired you to help this family, or the family or person contacts you directly, and you're having this initial discussion with them. What would you tell them as being the most important thing that they should be considering now at this early stage?
Before they relocate.
That's right.
Think about your timeline. Summer is very busy. This is when many families relocate, and it gets very intense and very stressful. If you can do it outside of the summertime, it's going to be easier. It's going to be better. Think and prepare all the documents that you will need. I know that in many countries it takes time to retrieve original documents. Get vaccinations in your home country. Texas has a specific list of vaccination and boosters that are required for kids to enter public schools. And it's always easier when you do it at home. It's very basic and it's very formal and it's very sad. But those are the things that you need to do to save yourself a lot of stress.
So a lot of people are going to be excited about coming over to America, perhaps for the first time, and you're going to help them stay excited about this. But do you share with them any, or do you try to correct any misunderstandings or misconceptions about what it's going to be like to live in America?
The first question I'm always asked, is it really that hot in Austin? And is it really a desert? I think many people expect that we live on a desert with a few highways. And Austin is very green, and it has a lot to offer for the outdoor recreation. We have so many parks, beautiful, ample parks. There are state parks. There's a state park within the city limits. So there's a lot to do. And Austin is fun. It's fun for young people. It's fun for young families. It's fun for professionals. So I think this is the first misconception about Austin. It's not a boring desert. And about the United States, well, it really depends, on the original of my expatriates. Many have traveled to the US. Many have been on exchange programs in college and lived, and went to school. It's very different than 20 years ago. Austin, Texas is very different than East Coast and West Coast as well. But, if you lived in New York, it doesn't mean you're going to know how it is to live in Texas.
And people make it such an important part of a region. How do you prepare them for Americans in general, but maybe Austinites, the people? I mean, to be honest, who and how you interact, who you meet in Austin and how you interact with them is going to be entirely different than you would, let's say, in some of the outside counties. How do you prepare them for those differences?
Well, I talk about politics and elections, and I think it gives a very good message. Austin votes Democratic. Rural parts of Texas vote Republican, and I think it tells people a lot.
So you have no reservations about diving into the political discussion?
I never discuss my views. I never discuss their views. I present statistics.
Okay. All right. So I've been asking around other Europeans here, and they have remarked about how open and friendly the Americans can be, in particular the people from Texas and even Austin. And some people have been critical of that, saying that's superficial. Hi, how are you? As when you walk into a cashier, or other people say it's just a light and breezy way of doing things. Has anybody remarked on you on that, about that with you, and how have you responded?
Well, I feel that Austin is a fantastic mix of Southern hospitality, but also because it's such a diverse international city of newcomers. Everybody is trying to make friends here, and I feel it's very often a genuine question. How are you? Where are you from? How long have you been here? Have you seen this? Have you been to that bar? Or have you done paddleboarding? You want to go and, play volleyball in Zilker? I feel like people really care about the others.
And how have your clients responded to that sort of openness?
It's interesting to observe as well, because some people are surprised and they love it, and it helps them a lot, and others, especially from the East Coast, are not okay with this is too personal, and like, I don't want to talk to the cashier about my favorite shampoo. I don't have time for this. I need to run. I have a meeting. I'm like, well, this is how Austin is going to be. People are going to chat with you. So I understand it's not for everyone, but this is how it is in Austin. We take time.
Your English is wonderful, but we do sense a slight accent. Do you find that people react differently to you when you have a particular accent and they want to ask about you, as opposed to, let's say, another American coming in and sitting at the same table?
I think it helps, especially my international expatriates. I feel like it's comforting to know that I'm not from here either. I feel like they are not embarrassed about their accents. And, I always tell people, when I hear, my English is not very good, I have a strong accent, my vocabulary is not that fantastic. I'm like, everybody's from somewhere. This is so great about living in America. We all have accents. Even within United States, there's so many accents. And, I'm familiar now with accent from Texas, but when I hear people from other states, I don't always understand them. And I've been here for 7 years, and it's going to keep happening, and it's okay.
Do people ask you about, oh yeah, I've got aunts or uncles, or my great-grandfather was from Warsaw too? And
all the time. All the time. And it's funny because, I think living in Poland, I have never realized that Polish emigration has begun in 19th century, and it was significant. Mm-hmm. And it's Poles who have emigrated to Brazil, to many, many other countries, and they're Jewish Poles who escaped war. So almost all my clients from Israel have Polish roots. A lot of my clients from Brazil have Polish origin. Yes, many countries, and it's interesting to get to know those stories. And it's also interesting to help them reconnect. We have a very small group of Polish immigrants in Austin, but we're very active. And we know each other. So
I noticed you're doing you're planning events. You're organizing these events. You're making sure that they're okay. And I've also noticed that you're supporting the football club of Austin, Bold, on Facebook. I see that you've liked it or following it.
Right.
Are you a football person?
My son is into soccer. He's 8. Okay. He's a big fan of soccer, and Lewandowski is the number 1 player, and he's Polish, and we're very proud of him.
Okay. Speaking of that, are you speaking Polish with him face to face?
Yes, we speak Polish exclusively. So he's fluent.
Mm-hmm. And are you doing this on your own, or are you introducing him to other Polish speakers as well within your group of people?
We have a group of friends, and I'm lucky enough that many of my Polish friends live nearby, and they all have children his age. So there's a lot of play dates. And we try to also follow Polish traditions and do Polish Christmas, for example. And, like painting eggs for Easter is a Polish thing, and we always do it together. And we want them to, to understand that Poland is not only the food, it's also a lot of traditions and culture and the language. And it's much easier when you have friends.
How do you bring that insight that you have with raising a child in a bilingual situation between schools, culture, and all of that? How do you share that insight with your customers?
I think that's also very helpful to everyone. My son was 3 when he went to school. He didn't speak any English at all. So the first weeks were rough for him and for me. And, after 3 months, he starts singing in English. And after a year, he was perfectly fluent. And that's what I always tell my clients. Don't worry that your child doesn't speak English. It's going to be hard for him at the beginning, but he's going to pick it up so quickly. And I guarantee you, in a year, he's going to be more fluent than you.
How old was he when you first moved here?
He was just under 2, and he didn't speak any language at all. He was a late speaker, and we spoke Spanish at home, and I spoke Polish with him. So English was a novelty to him when he went to school.
He's basically trilingual.
Yes.
And I know that I don't even have to ask you. I know that you support that, and you think that's a great idea. And so that's really good. But it's always easier to do that when the kids are younger. But as they get older, especially when they approach adolescence, mm-hmm. and maybe even they are adolescents, mm-hmm. language, culture, belonging is so very, very important to teenagers. How do you help customers and your clients understand that this particular time you've got kids who are 12, 13, 14 years old, you're going to bring them over here. How do you help them get through that?
Well, I think it's much easier to bring children to America and to explain them that they're gonna, pick up English and understand English, American culture. I bet it's much more challenging when you move to Mexico, when you move to Poland as an expatriate, and they have to get to know local language. I think all kids speak English now. That's, they all watch YouTube and American shows. So it's much different this direction. I think the challenge is to keep the original culture and original language. And this is what I tell my clients, that they have to continue speaking their mother language to the children. It doesn't matter that it's gonna maybe delay their English fluency a little bit. I always say when they go to school, they will pick up English. Don't worry about it. Keep the mother language, because this is something you can lose very easily, the fluency in mother language. If you don't speak the language for 30% of your time, you start losing it.
So, okay, so I understand that part, but I'm going to ask the question again about the adolescents.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had to deal with teenagers and the problems that go along with being a teenager anyway, but now you add a new culture, a new language, a new system? How do you help your customers get through that really difficult period, especially if they're arriving when the kids are just in the middle of it all?
So again, I think most of my clients, and I don't recall any case when a teenager wouldn't speak some English, at least enough to communicate with friends. So what I tell them is, if you want your teenage child to feel better here, to settle in quickly, sign them up for summer camps, sign them up for sports, sign them up for activities where they can meet people, and they will. And again, Austin is so friendly. There will be, birthday parties and play dates and things like that. When they're old enough, get them to drive car. Encourage them to get driving license, because American kids drive. And it's something, in Europe, you have to be 17 or 18. In Texas, you have to be 15. So it's much easier. So that's an incentive too for many kids who relocate. I'm going to get a driving license much quicker than my friends at home. And then there's the weather, which is great. And if you come from Ireland and you get a house with a pool and you can swim in November and send your friends, photos from your pool swimming when they have cold weather, it sounds funny, but they love it.
So you're that friendly voice at the other end of the telephone line at 11:30 at night, and we're so freaked out we don't know what's going on. Anna's got to help us out. You're that voice.
Right. So I'm the one who answers all the questions about Austin. What's the weather like? Where is a good school for my kid, and will he able to do hockey in Austin, and how do I survive summer, and what documents should I bring, and all those questions that come up. The closer you are to the relocation, the more questions you usually have, and I'm here to answer them.
So what was the weirdest or strangest or most difficult telephone call that you had to answer, regardless of whether or not you were successful at it? Just what was the strangest?
The strangest. How do I operate a vacuum? And she never had a carpet, and she didn't know how to operate a vacuum cleaner, and how often should she vacuum? And I was there to, guide her.
So what did that look like? What did you do?
Well, Zoom was not as popular as it is now. But I asked her to describe the vacuum cleaner and tell her how to vacuum and how do you physically operate the vacuum cleaner and where do you vacuum, how do you brush the carpet? I don't know. And how often do you do it? I'm like, as often as you need. I mean, once a day, every other day. We don't realize what kind of things may surprise you when you relocate. I think we all think about, the political system and the health system and education for the kids, and we prepare for that. But there are tiny little things in everyday life that are different, and there's a family who always drinks a certain juice for breakfast every morning, and they cannot find this juice in Austin. And they ask me, where can I find it? And it's a big thing for the kid. He is relocating to a totally different country. Sometimes they don't even speak English, and they want to have something that is their anchor, right? It gives them some stability and comfort. And this juice was important for this child. And we browsed, stores for this juice unsuccessfully, but, kind of things that are important.
What's the most enjoyable part of your job then?
There are so many, but getting to know people from countries I would never be able to visit because they're just not on my, short list. That's wonderful. I had a client from Zambia once, and never ever have I thought that I'm going to speak with somebody from Zambia, and I learned a lot, and I had to learn, basic things because we know a lot about Europe. We know, about United States and countries in Asia, and I know quite a bit about Latin America, but Africa is not on my radar, and Zambia was not. And we had a fantastic day. I spoke for 9 hours. He had so many questions. We spent time from 9 a.m. to 6 a.m., and we were not silenced for a minute.
Wonderful, wonderful. So the idea of meeting new people, understanding new cultures, hearing new accents, being asked those challenging questions, that's what you really, really like to do.
Yes, I feel like I'm the bridge, the bridge between their country and Austin and Texas and United States. And I really feel like what I do matters to many families.
So my impression is here, I'm new to the Austin area. My impression is that Austin is a very cosmopolitan city.
It is. It's a mid-sized city. It's not very large, for United States standards, but it's very diverse and very international. And Austin has always been a small, sleepy, hippie college town. And the last 10 years, it's growing. Austin is growing, at the very high rate. And the last 5 years, when tech started coming to Austin, and Austin is now called, the Silicon Prairies or Silicon Desert or Silicon Hills. And it's brought so much talent, so many young, talented, well-educated people, so many expatriates, so many people who are just happy with their lives. And it gives a wonderful vibe to the city.
It sounds like you really enjoy your job. That's a fair statement, right?
It is. I love it. When people relocate and they have expectations on how it's going to go and how it's going to be, I try to make them aware that I'm going to do everything to make it as smooth as possible, but there are going to be hiccups. And there's going to be stressful time. And one thing I always tell the wives of the expatriates is pamper yourself. Find time to pamper yourself because this is a very stressful situation. You've never done it before, probably. There's a lot of multitasking and it's stressful. And it's okay to, take time to yourself. It's needed. You need it. Do it for yourself. Do it for your family. Take care of yourself as well.
Wonderful. I like that. Mm-hmm. Plan for the stress, and there are going to be hiccups, and pamper yourself.
Exactly. My message.
Just the ladies. Can't the guys?
What? It's interesting. 5 years ago, I think 95% 97% of my expatriate families were, the guy is moving for the job, the wife is staying home. Now it's starting to be a little different. Now it's the wife, who is moving for the job, and the husband is staying home with the kids or looking for a new position. It's starting to happen more often, which is great. But traditionally, in Mexico, for example, when I was doing this in Mexico, I honestly remember only one family that was the wife, that was the VP, and the husband was working remotely, from home and picking kids up from school. So the message is to the other spouse who is not relocating for job.
To pamper
To
themselves.
pamper. Mm-hmm.
Even if you're a guy.
Even if you're a guy, even if nobody ever told you that you can pamper yourself, do it now.
Anna, I knew I was going to enjoy this. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it this much. So much of what you've said will help other people. But you've been wonderful. Your responses have been fantastic and very helpful.
Thank
I wish
you.
I could have all my guests as clear as this. Thank you very much, Anna.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Okay, we'll see each other online.
Awesome.
Thank you, Anna, for sharing your thoughts. You covered all three main stages of that big move: before, during, and after. Here are the points that I thought were most interesting. Firstly, before the move. Timing is everything, and remember that summer can be really busy. Gather your documents now. Some documents might take a really long time to get. Vaccinations. This was a big surprise for me. It's easier to get those vaccinations in your home country. And remember, each state is different. It's helpful to think of each state as a separate country because, in fact, in many respects, they are separate countries. Secondly, during the move, plan for the stress and the hiccups and the delays. It's all part of the experience. And pamper yourselves. I like this one. Not just the women, but the men too. You've worked hard to get to where you are. You do deserve a bit of special time. And also, stay in touch with your consultant. It doesn't matter how small the question. That's what she's there for. Thirdly, after the move. It may seem obvious, but it's worth saying. It's okay to hang on to your culture and your language. It's good for you, and it's good for your family, especially during this very stressful period. And if you have kids, expose them early to all that Austin has to offer. And for yourselves, enjoy Austin. Anna's right. Austin is a wonderful place. While it is a mid-size, mid-American city, Austin punches way above its weight with its international population. It has a drive and a buzz that rivals any big city on the West Coast or the East Coast. What more could an expat want? But here's what's really going to stay with me. Consultants offer a service. The quality of that service is defined by their knowledge, time, and skill. Clearly, Anna is a skilled and dedicated professional with a deep local knowledge of the wonderful city of Austin. But what makes her so special? In my opinion, it's her attention to detail. She knows where to find that special juice from the home country that a disoriented child simply has to have now. And it's her human touch. Anna understands that it's the small and unexpected moments that are often the most important. She earned the trust of the lady with the vacuum cleaner. Yes, we laughed a bit, but ask yourself, what expat worth their salt never felt confused by something simple in the new country? Who never asked themselves, what is that strange switch on the wall? And what does that odd local phrase really mean? And where is that worthless piece of paper that is now so damned important? Anna seems to know it takes an expat to know an expat. If you want to know more about Anna, you can find her contact information in the show notes below. Thank you for joining me on this episode of The Expats in Austin. If you want to hear more from the expats in Austin, go ahead and join the Expats in Austin Facebook group. And of course, please download and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. Please join me, Kurt Russell, the next time we meet the expats in Austin.